Well, it's Thursday, which means it is a warm morning out here in Arizona, and it's time to jump into our little, high school TARDIS machine and enjoy other quantum leaps back into the lifeline of me and my high school adventures with a group of pretty awesome people. Um, this video actually, in some behind the scenes stuff, um, there may be some cuts here and there, some edits in terms of like the video, only because this has a section of the book that I'm not sure I'm going to keep. And that is because it just, I don't know, the flow and everything like that. But I want to talk about it real quick. And that is, I took a class my junior year. Uh, Emily was in it. One of our friends, Amanda Lau, was in it. Um, let's see. And it was called American Studies, and it was this 2 hour block. And it was basically your English class and your kind of like American history class. It was a wonderful class. And it was a class that we had so much fun in, and I kind of still began to get my personality of sometimes questioning authority and everything like that. Um, and I have nothing but great memories of the class and the people involved. It's just in an interesting thing of writing and storytelling and stuff. Um, it just doesn't have the same flow, and so I might record it later as kind of like a lost chapter or something like that. But it has nothing to do with the people involved. It just has to do with it flow, which is just a weird edit thing that I run into while working on this. Is these memories and stories and things that I want to tell or I found important or memorable end up on a cutting room floor. So for all of my artist friends, writer friends, filmmaking friends, you get it. But yeah, it's just one of those. So there will be a part in the video where there will be probably a pretty harsh like edit, cut, pause, because in the book I have to scroll through like 5 or 6 pages to get to the next part. But anyway, more behind the scenes nuggets with me. So today's just kind of this one is a bit more slightly romance heavy. Not anything non PG, but just there was this window of this time in my junior year where everything was just kind of a weird whirlwind. But that's the teen years for you. Anyway, and I've never seen that dress you're wearing or the highlights in your hair that catch your eyes. I arrived at the school wearing all black for the dance. Dress pants, button-up shirt, and a suit jacket. Which even got Sarah to comment that I apparently was not hideous. Which, when delivered with her devilish grin, was enough for me to know that, well, she meant it. As I saw Meg pull into the parking lot, I walked up to her car and opened her car door. I offered her my hand as she stepped out, and all I could do was smile. "Oh my God," I said. "You look amazing." Her dress was black with gold circles and a diamond pattern on it. She wore her hair pulled up with curls, small strands that fell on her face, and some more were wavy in the back. She held my hand and smiled, and we made our way into the dance, handing our tickets to one of the teachers manning the table, and I looked at her again. Wow, was all my 16-year-old brain could figure out what to say at that moment. You look nice, she said. Black really does look good on you. The theme for Coronation that year was A Night in Camelot, and a bit of me still clinging to that bit of romantic chivalry, Hollywood style thing I held close. Well, he enjoyed the theme. We walked over, took pictures, uh, and the decor was a suit of armor and a shield. We took our pictures, then walked to the dance floor. And I can tell you right now, I have no fucking idea who else would have been there that night. Because I wasn't paying attention. There was no big group picture. There was no personal photos that friends took. It was just me and Meg that night. How was NAU? She asked. Weird. Good, but weird, I replied. Weird? Weird how? I filled her in on the concert, the interruption during our performance, but also the good. The letters from Wendy, my parents. How everybody just seemed to gel back together. And then, the entire way back, all I could do was think of you, I said. Oh, she said, smiling. Yeah. The thing about this coronation, which played out just like some fun 80s teen movie would, was that songs that were two that Meg told me were like her favorites or memorable to her played. One was More Than Words by Extreme, and the other was Lady in Red by Krista Bird. The first one was also something Meg would tell me from time to time. She knew how I felt about her, but sometimes it takes more than words to prove it. And it motivated me that I wanted to plan something for her. Just to continue to show much that I cared. Because I wasn't on the fence about how I felt for her. And during the second song, it encapsulated everything I felt that night. The only thing was it didn't match the color of her dress. When the song started, we came close together, my arm around her waist, her arms around my neck, and we held hands with the other hand. All the lyrics clicked that night. And yeah, okay, I'd never been shy to compliment Meg. And everything else faded away. I found myself like a dork singing some of the lyrics. I was just in that fog of being 16 and in love. Meg put her cheek to mine, just as the sung in the song, and at the very end, the whispered "I love you" was one I couldn't keep to myself. When it ended, we stood there for a moment, and she pulled her head back and kissed me. It wasn't long, and then we moved off the dance floor as faster songs began to play. I pulled out a chair for her, she sat down, and then I sat down as well. I'm glad you said yes to coming tonight, she said, a bit of smile crossing her face. Are you kidding? I laughed. I asked you twice, and you turned me down. I know, but it's not because I didn't want to come with you, she said. Oh, okay, you were just making me squirm? I replied. Maybe. Another smile. So... I started, but then I caught myself. Sorry, I won't push. I know we're just whatever we are. She squeezed my hand. Just know we're friends, and I do love you, and I have a lot of fun with you, and I'm glad we're here right now together. I smiled and nodded. I, in my brain, was still wrapped up in titles at the time that we find so important at that age. The high school weirdness and angst of boyfriend and girlfriend relationships. But there, in that moment, the only thing my heart was wrapped around was Meg. And I hoped, with whatever was going on, maybe, just maybe, she wasn't feeling all that different from me either. You know you're missing out on something. Well, that something depends on you. National Single Awareness Day, or as one might call it by the name it has on the calendar, Valentine's Day, had arrived my junior year, and as always in high school, it was met with love, disdain, confusion, or apathy. And in that year, confusion and just overall interest was probably the best apt way to put it in my reaction to the holiday. I had a few things going through my mind at the time, whether it was feelings for people or looking forward to the upcoming tour and prom. And being a bit of someone who at the time was very literal in his feelings, I also wasn't exactly counting out that anything was going on in my romantic life. And just, let it continue. Enough so that at this point, I think there was confusion on a lot of fronts. Are you or are you not dating somebody? Putman would ask me during our gaming times. I do not have a girlfriend. But am I seeing someone? I guess I don't know would be my response. And that's the truth. When it comes to high school and emotions and hormones and what titles mean or are, even just for clarity, there still hadn't been much finality in that area. But mine wasn't the only heart filled with high school romance, as it had begun to directly affect those I had around me. Xandar had asked Meredith on a few dates, and things had seemed to have worked out well enough that while they also were not necessarily boyfriend-girlfriend, they were very close and would be quite the pairing when I would see them together. Also, at separate times, David and Crystal had, kind of made mention to me of feelings they had for each other. So I had done what I could to help facilitate that. They had gone on a few dates and had begun actually dating. With those two big positives for two of my best friends, and Putman having himself a girlfriend and a relationship that did seem to be going well, Valentine's Day 2001 was actually going pretty well for everybody. I had brought Valentines for both Emily and Meg. I had sent an email to Adrian. I was just the hopeless romantic wandering through high school, and those three had always meant so much to me. This year was no different, so why not? Arriving at school, friends, and, well, more than friends, would hang out and hand out Valentines or have little things delivered from, student council fundraisers, and notes would be left on lockers. It was during a cappella in the last few minutes where Wendy finally allowed everyone to start handing out cards and gifts, and Emily walked up with a tri-folded piece of paper, red, handing it to me. "Happy Valentine's Day," she said, and then walked away to hand out more cards. I sat down in my chair and opened it, and Zan, Putman, and David were quick to, swarm. Written on top was, "For Matt, Happy Valentine's Day," and a series of hearts drawn on it like a bouquet, and it said, "Just another sloppy friend's poem." And I smiled as I read it. We've been there for each other through problems big and small. We snapped us back to reality, or given us a place to fall. Sometimes we'll talk through the night, and though we may constantly fight, when the fight ends, I know we've stayed friends. Through love lost and love gained, through crazy misadventures, one thing has remained. I've never not been a friend of yours. We've taught each other many things, and we've both learned how to bend. No matter what the future brings, you'll always be my friend. "Aww," came the three guys, but there was no joking around or giving me a hard time. They knew I was touched, and while we absolutely loved to give each other grief, matters of the heart we were, of course, all supportive of. I tucked the letter into my back pocket with a smile and walked up to Emily. "Thank you for the poem, Em," I said. She smiled back and gave me a hug. "Happy Valentine's Day, Matt." As the bell rang, we broke off our hug. "See you in third period," I said, and she smiled and nodded. I grabbed my backpack and headed for the door, planning to reconnect with the guys at lunch at the group table, and as doing so, I caught Meg in the hallway. I brought a flower for her for Valentine's Day, and she smiled and thanked me, and then handed me a purple folded piece of paper. "I'll see you at lunch, okay?" she said, giving my hand a squeeze. The top of it had a white heart cut out and glued on it with my name written in blue crayon, block letters, and I opened it up, finding Meg's handwriting in black crayon inside. "Te quiero con todo el alma," it read. "We've been through thick and thin, and stayed friends. Because I got you, babe. I love you. Happy Valentine's Day." And with a red heart and her name signed on it, I folded it back up, smiling still, and put it in my pocket. As I walked to class, though, it struck me I had no idea what the first sentence meant. To a bit of my laughter, because Meg had taken Spanish while I took German, and now I have to find a way to read it. I looked up and I could see Meg almost disappearing around the corner, but she looked back and smiled. "What does it say?" I called out. "You'll have to get it translated," she said, smiling even bigger than before, and she disappeared around the corner. Well, shit," I said, and started to laugh. When I got to German, I knew our teacher, Frau Zimmermann, would help. Frau was also one of the Spanish teachers, and during a bit of free time as she was walking through class, I asked her to come over. "Frau, can you help me with something?" I asked, and I pulled out the purple card and I handed it to her. I flipped open a notebook and turned the page, finding a blank page, and grabbed my pen. "I don't know what the first sentence says." "Of course, let me see." She opened the note and read it, and then looked at me and smiled. "Whoever wrote this for you finds you very special." I smiled. "Oh yeah?" She handed me the card back. "You may want to remember this. The first sentence of the card reads, 'I love you with all my soul,'" Frau said. And before I could write it, I froze. I let out a bit of a chuckle looking at the card, and Frau smiled again before moving on through the class. I folded my arms and leaned back in my chair. Teen Angst. That fucker. I want to glide down over Mulholland. I want to write her name in the sky. I want to do something for Meg. I told Corey one day in our science class, but tried to be so quiet when I did so. "Would you help?" "Of course," she responded in her bubbly way. "What are you thinking?" Picnic at Sunray Park," I responded. "Make dinner, maybe some dessert. Get her out there." "How are you going to get her out there?" she asked. "Blaine said he'd help with that part," I responded. "Oh, I'm in." Corey smiled, nodding her head. "Absolutely." The plan seemed simple enough, and was to do something on what would have been our 1-year anniversary of dating had we stayed, together. Because while everything had been happening, it was still a date that I remembered, and it was important. And in some dorky ass way, I was hoping maybe I could capture lightning in a bottle. To show, not tell. As the day got close, Corey and I got everything we needed to make dinner and dessert, and Blaine said he would pick up Meg, drive her around blindfolded, and then bring her to the park, and Corey and I would have everything set up. But the setup for all this was also one of my favorite moments. Corey had always been so cool, and her and Meg and I were great in science together and fantastic in the environmental club. But when it came to hanging out, Corey and I had always done it in larger group settings. So now, here we are, the two of us, both in a kitchen, which was a rarity for me at this point, and we got ready, and Corey put on some music. "Do you like Tom Petty?" she asked as the first track on his greatest hits album played. "Heck yeah," I said, and we smiled. And so that's what we did. We put a salad together, cooked a main dish, baked a dessert, all the while listening to Tom Petty. We sang to Breakdown and Refugee and Into the Great Wide Open. We laughed and told stories, and I talked to Corey about zombie movies, and I told her if I ever wrote and made a zombie movie, I would totally want her involved. She enthusiastically agreed, and we reminisced about tour. We talked about why our science teacher seemed to have a chip on her shoulder with us, just teenage stuff. All the while, bonding over Tom Petty. To this day, any song from Tom Petty plays, and I can instinctively think of Corey and hanging out on this day. It was just one of those cool collisions of music and memory making with a friend I hadn't really had time to hang out with. Just us, up to this point. When everything was prepared, we called Blaine, who would meet us at the park, and then followed up by calling Corey's boyfriend, who drove us to the park to get set up. As we set up blankets and drinks, Corey jumped into the idea of playing server, and as Meg arrived and the sun began to set, it all came together. Blaine would be back to help with cleanup and to pick Meg up. Corey was perfect in the assist. As dinner was over and we sat together on a picnic blanket after sunset, Meg and I once again found ourselves talking about what we were or weren't. We both admitted, again, that teen is just being a teen is confusing. And it was confusing to us and maybe other people, but we maintained the status quo. But she continued to reassure me. "If things change, I'll let you know," she said. "And I love what you did tonight." "I love doing it," I replied. And so that night, we just kind of enjoyed the evening. We were to each other what we were in that moment. But when the evening was over, Blaine showed back up and took Meg home. Corey and I packed everything we brought with us, and we listened to more Tom Petty as we got everything cleaned up from cooking. I headed home. Blaine called Blaine to thank him. We did a little catching up before I sat down to do some writing and get ready for the choir tour that was coming up. And much like the year before, the tour would not disappoint in being another adventure that would bring about change. Hail, hail to the good times, 'cause rock has got the right of way. We got ready to leave on tour, but a few days before then, the Environmental Club, we went on a walk along our adopted mile that the school had done, doing a bit of litter cleanup. Corey, Meg, and I went, and Emily, who had been to a few of the meetings, joined along as well. And we were all picking things up and clearing weeds when Meg asked a question of me and Emily. "You guys are going to Disneyland, right?" she asked, and we nodded. "Are you guys going to kiss in front of the castle like you did at Disney World last year?" Emily and I looked at each other briefly, and We talked about it, and it had been something cute from the year before, but admittedly, with how everything was, we hadn't really decided. I mean, we've thought about it, I replied, unsure where this conversation was going. I think if you did do it, it would be cute, Meg said. The question and response from Meg did present the opportunity to have the discussion, and Meg was very upfront. This wasn't about jealousy. There was no impression that we shouldn't or couldn't do it. She was genuinely curious and thought of it as something cute we had done. And going from Disney World one year to Disneyland the next allowed for like kind of a bit of a callback. Now, Meg and I, in all of our talks, we had kind of settled on where we were, but I mean, Emily and I hadn't ever really talked about anything past our friendship. And much like the year before, I think the three of us were just trying to all be on the same feeling, all on the same page about feelings and not wanting anybody to get hurt or things misinterpreted. The day we were set to leave passed quickly, and when the day was over, all the members of choir who were going on tour were all meeting in the choir room after school. After loading up luggage, we had a few minutes left to go, and it was here that Meg joined us and sat with me against the wall. Putman grabbed my camera and snapped a photo of us holding hands as we sat, and that was not an all too uncommon occurrence. Meg had come by to see us off, but also she had offered to take all my stuff, drop it off at home with my folks after I left. I have a Polaroid camera I'm bringing, Whitney said, passing by. Do you want a picture of the two of you, so Matt can take it on tour? Yeah, Meg said, and I was more than happy to oblige. So, as we hugged, Whitney snapped the photo, a great photo of the two of us, and handed it to me as it developed. Could we do one more? Meg asked, and Whitney nodded. Okay, on 3. Whitney counted, and on 3, Meg kissed me as Whitney snapped the photo. I remember being slightly surprised, and after breaking the kiss, Meg smiled. Call me when you get back, okay? She said, standing up. I stood up too, and she scooped up her backpack purse and my backpack that I wasn't taking with me on tour. Have a really great time, Matt. As Meg smiled and walked away, saying bye to friends as she did, I turned, and Whitney handed me the photo before walking away herself. Zan and Putman were standing off to the side, and they had grins on their faces. And you guys aren't dating? Putman asked, folding his arms across his chest. I shrugged. Let's get on the bus, brother. It's time to go, Zan said. The three of us climbed onto one of the buses, and Zan filed in, sitting next to Meredith. Putman and I in front of Zan, and Emily and Kate were across the aisle from us, sitting in. Then Crystal and Wendy and a few chaperones were a few seats in front of us, giving that last bit of vocal itinerary for the trip. We'd be stopping in Blythe for dinner, and we were going to be on the road for roughly the next 7 hours until we got to the hotel in California. As the buses all started, Putman and I pulled out CD Walkmans and selected some music for the drive, me picking some Journey, and he decided on Disturbed. Before we got started, there was a time to talk and plan a bit of an idea of what our day at Disneyland would look like, and it seemed that, other than Whitney and the guys, no one had seen Meg kiss me. As we got into the trip, people talked or turned on music or read books, and Putman tapped me on the arm, and I brought my headphones down. What's up, bro? I asked. Do you want to talk about what's going on? He asked, in one of the more candid moments in the Brotherhood, and I shrugged. Honestly, I wish I knew sometimes, but I'm just going to focus on the trip. I can't just sit around playing the what if game right now, I guess, I said. Do you got any ideas? And then he shrugged. Honestly, no. I was just wanting to make sure you were good. Yeah, bro, I am, I responded. When we rolled into Blythe, I wrapped up listening to some live AC/DC, and after dinner, we filed back on the bus. This time, Emily sat next to me, Kate sat with Putman, and through the rest of the drive in California, our group just kept talking and joking. Arriving at the hotel, we all piled out, got our luggage and room information, and the three of us in stars were going to room together, which was going to be an absolute blast of a room. We helped Crystal, Emily, Kate, and Meredith with their luggage, saying goodnight, and then got to our rooms. Alright guys, day one of singing tomorrow. Shall we call it an early night, I asked, jokingly, as Zan and Putman got out decks of Magic the Gathering cards. I turned on the TV and we cracked open a few sodas. I didn't think so. And as Highway to Hell filled our room, we did what we always did when we were together. Stayed up a hell of a lot later than we should have. But we wouldn't have it any other way. It's a wonderful surprise to see your shoes and your spirits rise, throwing out your frown and just smiling at the sound. After a day of singing at one of the local high schools, we got up the next morning and immediately got dressed. And it was a nice change of pace to know, even though we were getting ready for Disneyland, no fucking mouse was waking me up. However, this was replaced by Xandar, who gleefully sang "It's a Small World" while getting dressed. I put on a pair of pants and had brought my black Ario Speedwagon t-shirt and threw that on, and the three of us, Zan, Putman, and I, were out the door and down for breakfast. Knowing we only had one day at Disneyland, but planning to stay all day until after the nighttime parade, we didn't waste much time at the hotel before loading up the buses and immediately took off for the drive to Anaheim. Upon arriving at the park, the group of us who all sat along together the night before during a stomp show got together for our day at the park. With it only being choir and the previous class graduating, only Xandar and I, from our Disney World group, were together, while adding the rest of our friends would allow the creation of new memories. It was also nice since the year before, other than just a few hours on the last day, Emily, Kate, and Crystal hadn't hung out with us at Disney World. Wendy and the chaperones told us we would meet up for a choir picture a little early in the afternoon, but other than that, we were left to our own devices until the park closed. Our group split off, and there's this grainy black and white photo from the choir yearbook that year of us. Though, I'm hidden from view beside Putman and behind Crystal as Kate and Emily push on me. Sherry's with us, and along with Meredith and Zan, who is wearing a giant green goofy hat with floppy ears. Interestingly enough, as I look back on it, compared to sophomore year, I don't actually have many photos from this tour that I've ever been able to find. So this group photo is one of the few I'm able to look back on. When we did meet up with the giant group picture, there's our group. Me standing with Andrea, and Zan has Meredith on his shoulders, a further continuation of the absolute adorable dance of semi-dating they continued to do through the years. As we went through Disneyland, we were disheartened that Pirates of the Caribbean was closed, meaning both of our trips to Disney parks in consecutive years, we never got a chance to go on the ride. But we continued on through more of the exhibits. We then quickly jumped in line for the Haunted Mansion, where we snapped photos of the graveyard decor around the mansion before getting in line. "So what are you going to do if the ride breaks down with the spiders this time?" Putman said, joking. "Who knows?" I responded. "Maybe I'll hop over to your car and snuggle with you." "Do it, and I'll punch you in the kidneys," he replied, playfully balling up a fist. "Ooh, not as much as a turnoff as you think." "You fucker," he laughed. "It's okay, I'll snuggle with you," Zan replied, adding in on the fun. "I'm pretty sure you're spoken for right now," I responded, nodding to Meredith, who smiled. When it was our turn, our group jumped into the carts. Emily and I took the lead, followed by Zan and Meredith, Crystal and Kate, and then Sherry and Putman. As we moved through the ride, we were having a great time, and as the spider section came up, we passed through without a problem. Emily had interlocked her arm with mine as we left the spiders behind. "Hey, Matt, you made it! Emily, did he start crying?" Putman said, laughing behind us. Before we could answer, there was a sudden groan of metal. As we looked around, the ride came to a halt. "Fucking Putman, what did you do?" Zan asked playfully. Wait, this wasn't me," he said. "You jinxed us," I added into the joke. "We were fine, and then you had to say something. We were having fun, and the girls all got involved too." And Putman threw up his hands in mock disbelief. Fine, it's all my fault." We laughed and settled in as the announcement came overhead of some, technical difficulties, and that the ride would be resuming shortly. Emily and I sat in the cart talking and listening to Putman continue to try and defend himself, while others along the ride complained that it would stop. "Maybe I'm the bad luck," I joked. The ride was stuck for about 10 minutes before restarting, and when we were done, we continued to give Putman a little grief, but he was a good sport, because by this point in our brotherhood, giving him grief was the way we showed him love dearly. When we all exited the ride, we all started to name off places we wanted to visit, and it was becoming quite apparent we all had different priorities, so we agreed to splitting up. Putman, Zan, Meredith, and Sherry were planning one way, Kate and Crystal were planning another, and everybody looked at me and Emily. "Where are you two going?" Crystal asked. "Who are you going with?" "I think we're just going to do our own thing," I said, looking at Emily, who nodded. "Meet at the castle before the parade?" Putman asked. We all agreed and picked a time. "We'll meet up with you guys then," Emily said. We all started to split off, and I offered Emily my arm. "You ready?" I asked. "Let's go!" Emily slid her arm in mine, and through the Magic Kingdom we went. We walked arm in arm through the whole park, laughing side by side and talking the entire time. For a few hours, we left out talking about school, but were more focused on what we were seeing and talked about whatever came to mind. She asked about my writing, I asked about her plans for Pops, and we talked about what song we would try out. We joked about our disagreements and fights, shared jokes, decided on a few rides and attractions, and swung through shops to pick up a few souvenirs. I'd carry her bag at times, we'd run into characters and give them hugs, and wave at choir people as we saw them, but we never left each other's side. It was just a lot of fun, and just time spent together that we hadn't had a lot of at that point. As the evening descended into the park, we made our way in front of the castle and bumped into Whitney, who we'd run into a couple of times through the day, and figured that as the castle began to lit up, now would be the time for our picture. Whitney happily agreed to take it, remembering it from the year before, and I handed her my camera, and Emily handed her over her bag. We stepped over in front of the castle and turned to each other. "Ready?" I asked, and Emily nodded. After we took our photo, we walked through the park and to the parade, where we found ourselves a spot against a light pole and watched the parade and the Phantasmic show arm in arm. We snapped a few photos of the floats and the characters. When it was all over, we found our group waving, and in a few minutes a lot more of the choir as we started making our way to the buses. We sat together and chatting, and when we got back, thanked each other for a good day before heading back to our room. I made it to the room just as Zan and Putman arrived. "Good day, brothers?" I asked, as we walked in and turned on the TV. "Hell yeah, bro," Putman responded. "Good day with Meredith, Zan?" I followed up. "Very," he replied. "We had a lot of fun. It's no secret that I like her, and I like spending time with her. It was a great day." "Zan, you were carrying her on your shoulders for most of the day," Putman said. "Oh, yeah, I think we got a picture of that," I added. After a little bit more talk, Putman looked over. "Are you going to call Meg?" he asked. "Tomorrow, after we get back from the party," I responded. Guys, what the fuck am I supposed to do? There was a bit of a pause, I think there was this equal part of me being in an enviable and unenviable position. The guy knowing how he felt, but someone else didn't. Zan and Putman were no stranger to my feelings about everything. I wore my heart on my sleeve, and they were my brothers. We showed affection through joking about each other, but the three of us were always there for this kind of thing. I leaned on the chair and shrugged, opening the fridge for one of my ever-present root beers. Zan said, "Whatever will happen, will happen. And you can count on me to fucking tell you to call her," Putman said with a grin as he cracked his knuckles. I laughed at Putman. Yeah, thanks. "Brother," Zan added, seeing me still just kind of teenagely conflicted, "just enjoy the rest of the tour how you want to, and it'll all sort itself out when we get home." The people starting to climb the walls. Ooh, hoo-hoo. It looks like everybody is having a ball. The next morning, for the rest of the day, all the choirs got breakfast and ready to go compete in the Southern California Choral Musical Festival at Mount San Antonio College. Downbeat would be sitting this festival out as a group, but our members would be intertwined with a cappella, and then Shantae would perform as well. While we were set for the afternoon, we did get some practices in and watch the other choirs. This was also where we would also keep an eye on our friendly rival Corona, who we were enjoying a second-year feud with. As we got ready to leave the hotel, Putman and I walked up, talking about the day before and the haunted mansion breaking down, and Kiki and Annie R. were overhearing us. "It's the second time I've been on the ride, and it's broken down both times," I explained to them. "But this time it wasn't around the spiders," Putman joked. "Oh, why is that a thing?" Kiki asked. "Matt's arachnophobic," Putman said. "What?" Kiki asked, slightly entertained. "Yeah, I don't know why. They creep me out," I responded. "I have a pet tarantula," Kiki said, and I just stared at her. "He has his cage in my room." "I'm sorry, what?" was my response. "Want to hear a story?" she asked, getting excited. "Alrighty," I said as we got on the bus. Putman got into the seat net, and then me and Kiki and Annie sat across from us. "So one night I went to go feed him, and I noticed his cage was open. He had escaped. So I started looking for him all over my room, and he just didn't turn up," she began. "So finally, I got into bed, and as I looked up, there he was, on the ceiling." On the ceiling?" I asked. "Yeah, and he didn't want to come down. So I told him good night and I fell asleep," she replied. "With him above you?" Putman asked. "Yep. And then when I woke up in the morning, he was still up there. So I got up and got ready and told him I was going to school, and he climbed down the wall, and I put him in his cage and left," Kiki said with a grin. "Yeah, no," I said. No. And I mean this nicely. But I don't think I'd ever want to come to your house," I said. "You have a guard spider?" "Honestly, that's both cool and creepy," Putman added. "Geez, Kiki, you got any other fun stories?" I asked, intrigued. Kiki smiled and leaned in a little closer. "Have you ever thought about what you would do if you woke up and had a day as a girl?" "Because I've thought about what I would do if I woke up as a guy," she mentioned. "Not really." "No?" I said. Kiki curled her mouth into a grin. "I would masturbate like all day," and then burst out laughing. Putman and I, our jaws dropped. And then we absolutely lost it. "Oh my God," I replied between laughs. My face hurt from laughing as Kiki leaned back in her seat. "Oh, you are awesome, Kiki. You know that? Oh my God, you really are." And all we could do was laugh the rest of the bus ride as Kiki continued to regale us in funny stories and anecdotes. Arriving at the festival, our morning was mostly watching other choirs and being a supportive audience, interspersed with times where we might try and duck out to practice our songs. After the lunch break, we went right into warm-ups because a cappella had to perform at like 1:40 in the afternoon, right behind one of Corona's choirs. Performance blocks for these things were kind of like 15 to 20 minutes, long enough for 2 or 3 songs, and then we'd spend the next 20 minutes in a clinic. As always, we'd listen to feedback, we asked to sing specific parts to enact said feedback, and then be moved off to the next choir. Once a cappella was done, we returned to our seats to listen, and we were there to show support behind Shantae as they took the stage. With performing out of the way, it was time for group pictures, and once again, we got the formal one out of the way as I stood by Wendy. And then we all had a chance to cut loose with the fun one. Becky running over to me, and we struck a pose as the rest of the choir hammed it up for the camera as well. At the end of the night, Putman and Zan urged me to call Meg, which I did before turning in for the night. "I'm sorry I didn't call yesterday, and I'm sorry it's so late," I said when she picked up. "We're going to be leaving pretty early in the morning, but I did want to call you and tell you we should be back by about 6 tomorrow." "It's okay, I understand," she said. "Have you had a good time?" "Yeah, it's been great," I replied. "That's good." There was a short silence. "When you get home and settled, will you call me? I have to tell you something," she said. "Yeah, of course," I responded. "I'll talk to you later." I hung up the phone, and Zan and Putman looked at me. "How's Meg?" Putman asked. "She's good," I said, sitting on the chair. "What's up?" was Putman's follow-up. "She said she wants to talk to me about something when we get back," I said. Zan asked, "What do you think she wants to talk about?" "Man, I don't know," I replied. "I'm just kind of riding this out." It wasn't a lie. I had a wonderful tour trip, and a lot of that was thanks to spending time with Emily, Putman, and Zan. On the other hand, I definitely missed Meg, and now, whatever she had to tell me had my brain running. I was just a ball of confusion. Anticipation is running through me. Let's find the key and turn this engine on. The ride home saw our group sit together much like the ride to California. Emily and Kate, Zan and Meredith, myself and Putman, Crystal and Sherry. And as we rode through California, Putman and I talked, working out plans for a gaming day with Zan, working out story ideas, and about getting back home, both him to his girlfriend at the time, and I to figure out what Meg wanted to talk about. "You nervous?" he asked. "Might have a little bit of that," I responded. "Could be she found someone she's interested in. It could be something else." "Her finding someone would have been pretty quick, don't you think?" he replied. I shrugged. I wouldn't be surprised, though. I'm not exactly blind to how great she is, so I guess I'll just find out when I get there. After stopping for lunch, we were back on the road to Arizona, and our seat arrangements would change from time to time. I chatted with Emily and Kate. Zan and I talked about war games. We rehashed memories from the trip, and how when we got back we'd be going right into Pop's concert auditions. Zan and I were asked by Wendy if we would run a tech crew for the Pop's auditions, if needed, making sure microphones and speakers were set up, but we didn't have to be in the auditions, and we agreed. Putman agreed to be our backup, and we were told we could just hang out in the hallway and check people in for auditions, which gave the three of us something to plan for as well on the drive. When we finally got back to Mountain Point, it was right around our projected 6 o'clock time, and we immediately jumped off the bus and began unloading. There were already parents in the parking lot or in a little drive-up lane to help where they could, and I had arranged it to just walk home from the school. I helped Emily and Kate get situated with both unloading from the bus and getting their stuff into their cars, with saying goodbye until the next morning, although Wendy had canceled Downbeat, so we were able to sleep in a little bit. All my friends started to head out. Putman gave me a supportive nudge. "Let us know what happens with Meg," he said, and Xandar nodded in agreement. "Will do," I responded. I walked around the school carrying my bag, and as I got home, I immediately said hi to my parents. They asked how the tour went, how Disneyland was, and mentioned that Meg had called about coming by and dropping off my backpack and some homework from what I missed at school. They had mentioned they had already eaten, but if I wanted something, they could whip something up, and I said I was fine for now. I'd just get settled and call Meg. I went upstairs, unloading the bags, said hi to Sarah, before plopping down on my desk chair and stared at my phone. Alright. Here it goes. I sighed to myself. I dialed Meg's number, and after a ring or two, she picked up. "Hello?" "Hey, it's me," I said. "Just got home." "Hey, Matt, listen, are you busy?" she asked. "No," I said, those nerves starting to pick up a little bit. "Okay, I'm going to come over in a little bit. Is that okay? I have your stuff, and I just wanted to talk to you in person," she responded. "Sure thing. I'll see you in a bit." She hung up the phone, and then I did, and my mind fired off into about 6 different directions. I sat in my office chair, opened the blinds, and waited. Minutes passed, and I turned on the radio, trying to find something to pass my time and nerves as the minutes just crept by. And about 20 minutes later, I saw her walking up, so I shut off the music and ran down the steps. No mat signal necessary for this one. I thought myself ready for whatever was going to come. So, as I hit the bottom floor, my parents looked up at me from the couch as I headed to the door. "I got it," I said, as I clicked the lock, grabbed the handle, and turned. Love can cure your problems. You're so lucky I'm around. I opened the door and Meg stood on the other side. She had my backpack in hand and we exchanged smiles as she stepped in. I took my backpack and she waved at my parents as we walked through the living room. "Did you want to come up?" or I asked, nervously shifting the backpack onto my shoulder. "Yeah, for a minute if that's okay," she responded. My parents nodded and we went up the stairs to my room, closing the door behind us. I put my backpack down on the floor. "Thanks for the bag," I said. "Not a problem," she responded. "So is everything okay?" I asked, and I could feel my nerves getting the best of me at this point. Oh yeah, Okay, give me a second." She seemed nervous too. "Is it about prom?" I asked. It just came out. It was the first thing I thought of. "Has something changed?" Sort of," she said. Oh, okay. Well, I know we talked," I responded, but she cut me off. "Matt, I missed you the entire time you were gone. Being at school without you, not seeing you at lunch, I just missed you," she began. "When you left for tour and we kissed, I just kept thinking about it. Matt, I love you, and I want us to be together. No gray area, no confusion." I stood in my room like a train had hit me, and I think the fact I hadn't said anything made Meg nervous. "Is that something you still want?" she asked, fiddling with the buckle on her purse. "Meg, I love you too. I'd love for us to give us another shot." There was this deep exhale from both of us, and Meg seemed to get a little emotional. "Okay, well that went well," she said. I chuckled. "Meg, all I ever wanted for us was to be clear. I never stopped caring about you." She walked up to me and kissed me, and we stood there for a minute. "Are you hungry?" she asked. "I could go for something to eat," I responded. "Okay." walked downstairs, and my parents were cool with me going out to get something to eat, just asking I'd be back by like 9 since it was a school night. They gave us a couple hours, so out we went. We had dinner, and I told Meg about the tour, about the fact that, yes, Emily and I had redone our kiss picture in front of the castle, because if we were going to move forward as an us, I was going to do it with everything out there. I explained that a lot of the confusion came from just not knowing what was going on in the heads and hearts of others. But I reinforced that I never felt it was malicious. She said she'd been feeling stronger feelings, but that it was really me leaving for tour that had really seemed to hit her, and that she knew as soon as I got back we would need to talk. After eating, we went back to my apartment complex and walked around for a bit before I walked her back to her car, right before 9. We kissed again, this time longer, and when we broke our kiss, she grinned and I returned it. "Oh, there's that idiot grin you call it of yours when you get happy," she said. "Hey, you've got it too," I responded. "I'm gonna head home, but I'll see you tomorrow?" she asked. "You got it." "I love you," she said. "I love you too. I'll see you tomorrow morning." She got in her car, rolled down the window, kissed me one more time before pulling out of the parking lot and heading down the road. I got back inside and up to my room, turning on some music as I settled in. I sat at my desk and pulled out the Polaroid photos of me and Meg out of my wallet, putting them on the desk in front of me, then taped them right to the side of my computer tower. I also immediately got to writing, listening to music late in the night, both journaling and attempting to write another zombie story. Idiot grinning all the way. Looking for America. Coming through your schools. It didn't seem to catch any of the Brother Corps off guard, or other close friends, that Meg and I were back together. I explained the call to the brothers, and the general consensus was that finally we'd figured things out. A day or two later, after coming out of Downbeat, I found Meg sitting with Putman, and Putman was holding her hand, and they both smiled at me. Putman had a devilish grin, and I put my hands on my hips, just waiting to hear what he had to say. "Hey, bro, listen, I know this is going to be hard to hear, but Meg has decided she's changed her mind. Instead of dating you, she wants to date me," he said. And I could tell he could barely contain his laughter, and Meg just laughed. Oh yeah?" I said, grinning. "Yeah," he responded. I let out a playful growl as I leapt over Meg, catching Putman in a headlock, and we both hit the floor. "Holy shit," I heard him say, laughing as he took a couple shots into my kidneys. Nope. Kidney shots won't work this time, fucker," I laughed. "Fuck, did you forget to put on deodorant this morning?" Putman said. I give, he said, tapping out. I let go of him, and we both couldn't stop laughing. He massaged his head before giving me another playful shot in the arm. "Okay, for real, I'm happy for you both," he said, "and holy shit, you cleared Meg on that jump." "I know," Meg said, laughing, and she took my hand. If anyone hadn't noticed it by now, it was also kind of hard to miss as Meg and I walked through the performing arts hallway hand in hand that morning. I walked Meg to the band room and kissed her goodbye, and past Mr. Warner, who greeted me with his low, "Choir boy." I bowed my head in return, and then turned back to walk to the choir room. "So are you guys dating now?" Scott asked, who crossed his arms with a smirk, and even a few of the other guys looked over. Yes, we are, okay?" I responded. "Fucking finally," Putman added, still playfully massaging his forehead from my headlock. As we worked our way through the rest of the day, one of the areas where Meg and I did seem to find some negative response to our dating seemed to come from our science teacher / environmental club sponsor. As we walked hand in hand into the room and took our seats, which even when randomly picked at the start of the year, ended up with Meg sitting right in front of me, she just seemed bothered. We'd walk the halls holding hands, maybe kiss at lunch and saying goodbye, but never in class. That was not our style. But it just felt like she had her eyes on us. We went through class no issues, did a club meeting after school, another walk, and even approached fellow club members, as if they thought we were doing something wrong, but they just shook their heads. I wish I could say it was just tied to class, But it also happened, we ran into her in a grocery store after school one day, and she gave us the same reaction when we said hi. So we did what teenagers do in the face of disapproving authority. We ignored her. And while we had never denied our feelings for each other, it was a note that Meg handed me between our 6th and 7th hour break of American Studies that had caught me off guard. We would frequently say hi to each other anyway, but I can still remember her smile when she handed me the note, telling me to read it when I could, along with another note that thanked me for our plan later that night to meet up with her sister and her mom to go see a movie. In class, we had free time, so I opened the note. Hi, I'm just writing to say I love you and that I was thinking about you, she wrote. I love the way you try so hard to make me feel better, even when it annoys me. I love the way you try to do better when you've already surpassed my expectations. I love the way that you look when Ryan or Putman or Scott start saying or asking if we're going out. Your face just beams. I love that you love music. I love the way that you're so careful with me. I love the way it took me 5 minutes to get rid of my idiot grin after you kissed me before 6th hour today. I love that you love me. I couldn't contain my joy. A quick one-page note, but something that reminded me just what she'd always meant to me. It's weird how teenage emotions work, but who cares? Because while young, they are real, and there's a lot of joy in that. My joy was contagious, and I shared it with Emily, who read the note and was so overjoyed for the both of us. After giving us the blessing over our dating that rivaled that of The Godfather, it was absolutely no secret she was Meg and I's biggest cheerleader. It was something both Meg and I would talk about, was what her support meant to us, and she was one of our best friends. It was also here, having read that letter, where I began to hatch a plan. A surprise song for Meg. It was a song I'd known for some time, but it seemed so perfect for Meg that I felt compelled to audition it for Pops. But I wanted to make sure it sounded right. Pop's auditions were announced for the next week. Okay, let me try that one again. Pop auditions were announced for the next week, and it sent excitement through the choir, as Wendy also announced the Pop concert theme was going to be decades. Each choir is going to take a different decade and do a series of songs, Wendy announced in a cappella. It took me a while to decide on what genre you all would do, but then realized there was no way we could pass this up. A cappella? You're doing the 80s. Hell yeah! I exclaimed, bursting out laughing. This is going to be amazing! Laura laughed. Matt has such a mad scientist laugh. I love it. We're going to do 3 songs, Wendy explained. We're doing The Heat Is On, Flashdance, and We Are the World. The charity song? I asked. Yes, and we'll have a whole bunch of solos for that one, so Matt, I'll need your help figuring out everyone who sang on that. We'll play the songs tomorrow so you all can hear it, she responded. Matt is the perfect age for a kid in 1985, so this should be awesome, Brian added. As Wendy continued to explain, Downbeat would do a bit of a calypso-inspired set, and the rest of the choirs were given their assignments as well. Men's chorus would be doing the same Girls, Girls, Girls medley I did freshman year. Shantae and Encore would be doing a series of 50s and 60s girl group songs, and now, with all the choirs decided, it was announced that there would be quite a few openings for auditioned acts, the bulk of the show being made up by them. It was also announced that Wendy had found a group willing to sound mix and record the concert onto CD so that we would be able to have a copy. As I readied for Pops, I found a bit of musical confidant in Andrea. As she and I had been chatting about auditions, and she asked my opinion on a song she wanted to do. She came over after school one day and played the song she wanted to audition, singing along with it, and I wholeheartedly cheered her on to do it. I asked her to listen to my idea for Meg, and she agreed. When we were done, she said I had to audition it, that it would be perfect. I thanked her, and also mentioned we needed to start practicing a song ourselves for the next year, and right then and there agreed we would tackle the Elton John / Kiki D song, Don't Go Breakin' My Heart, and that would be our goal. With the end of the week coming, Wendy put the sign up, and auditions were on. Just as long as you stand. Stand by me. So everyone on the sign-up sheet told us how many mics they'll need, Wendy said. The piano is off to the side in case they need to play something, but all you need to worry about is rolling that out and the mics. They take care of any CDs, musical equipment, whatever. Zan and I were unbagging a couple of microphones, nodding along. Got it, and then we'll hang out in the hallway, Zan said. And we'll let you know when the next act is here, when we have to do any stage changes, I added. Pretty straightforward. Did you guys need to get anything to eat? It's going to be a long day, Wendy asked. Zan and I had brought snacks and planned to eat late anyway, so we shook our heads. All good here, boss, I responded. Okay, then let's get started, she replied. For the rest of the afternoon and into the evening, choir members would try out an act in a short window of time. Songs were asked to be no longer than 5 minutes, so a 10-minute sign-up window was given. Once the person was done, Wendy would excuse them, we would set up for the next one, and then out we'd go. Zan and I had it down to a science. Wendy trusted us to do it, and we knew Wendy was formulaic and steady with how she ran auditions, so we never got caught off guard by a request. Later in the afternoon, Meg stopped by to hang out and brought us food, and Zan and I sat and ate. And after Emily and my audition, Meg gave me a good luck kiss, and understanding that I was trying out a song, but didn't know that I was trying it out for her, she still wished me luck. While Meg, Emily, and Kate left to go spend time together after Emily and Kate's audition, David arrived, and he and I went over our audition, and then stepped into the room, Wendy looking at us. Do you have a CD for background, she asked. Nope, all a cappella, I responded. Oh, okay, go ahead. David and I then began to perform Stand By Me by Ben E. King. We played around with it in the mornings before Downbeat and realized that for two bass singers, we found ways to harmonize our voices, with me taking a more higher register. The other thing we did was I made a conscious choice. I wanted to do the background vocal to David. David would occasionally try out for solos, but he had such this deep, low voice that he was almost always passed up due to him just being strong, low, steady bass on the bass section. We decided, though, him and I, that this was his. We wanted him to do this one. So I did vocal percussion at times or did some higher harmony, but it was all David. And it was all cool. Wow, Wendy said when we finished. You guys decided that David should take melody and lead. We nodded. Something different than you might expect, David responded. It was a really good choice, both how you performed it and the song itself. Great job, guys, she said. We walked out. Zan readied the next participant, and David and I exchanged brotherly hugs. That was great, David, I said. Yeah, I thought so too. Thanks for doing it with me, he responded. It was an absolute honor. Really. I'll come by later to see if we made it, he said, and waved to Zan as he headed to the door. Will you be coming to Crystal's later? Yeah, I think that's our plan after here, I responded. It was Friday, so of course there'd be a get-together at Crystal's, and with now David and Crystal dating, he was headed over there early. So he said one more goodbye and headed out. So Zan and I worked the rest of the afternoon and into the evening, cheering on everyone as they went into their auditions and clapping as they came out. The familiar relationship of choir was a constant thing, and some would just stop and chat with us to kill time. As the night came close to an end, though, I began to get up and stretch and pace. I treated the audition almost like an athlete would before a game, admittedly, and it's a dorky parallel. I'd changed into a pair of dress pants and a dark blue t-shirt instead of the shorts and Oreo shirt that I was working tech in, so I was feeling myself getting into the right frame of mind. Nervous? Zan asked. I mean, I almost thought about asking Meg to be here for the audition just in case I don't get in, I responded. Nah, you'll get in, Zan said. That's the hope, I replied. I jumped to the left and stepped to the right. Gotta put your hands on your hips, I added, continuing a bit of my time warp tradition. The act before me left, and I was the last audition of the night. I cleared my throat, grabbed my CD, and walked in. Giving Wendy the audition sheet, she asked which Wendy asked for. It included our name, the song title, whether or not we'd have sheet music or live accompaniment, and then I jumped on the stage. I set up my own mic, got the music ready, queued up the song, and then hit pause. "So why this song?" Wendy asked. Well, I've always loved it. It's a great love song. It reminds me of Meg. And I want it to be a surprise for her if I get picked, I responded. Wendy arched an eyebrow and grinned. "Okay, let's hear it." I went a little longer than I thought I would today. Actually, I probably did like 3 or 4 more chapters than I had originally planned. But that's going to do it for today in this reading. As all of a sudden, all of this wonderful world of high school, finally starts to sort itself out. This is also a precursor to probably my favorite concert I ever did in all of choir, and that is my junior year Pops concert. And the reason is because everything just, holy crap, works out almost perfectly. But I get into that. And actually what I'm going to do is probably the next video, I am going to try and condense almost all of the rest of junior year into one video. We'll see. I mean, I'm looking at that, and that could be like 20-something odd pages or 30-something odd pages, so I don't know. But that's a problem for me to figure out on another day. So thanks for watching. Thanks for the eye rolls. And remember, be good to yourself. And keep on rolling.